ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you?
It's time to flip a coin and find out.
Well, we need to know what we're calling for here.
We're calling it to see who's got the best sports knowledge here on the Coin Flip with Martin Kelly
and Jacob Zimmerman.
Flip it again.
Week 9 reaction, Week 10 predictions here on the Coin Flip podcast. Jacob Zimmerman, Martin Kelly. We got a fun slate of games coming up. I can't believe we have now done 9 podcasts, our 10th NFL midseason podcast predicting games every single Sunday. Martin, I took Week 9. I think this is my 5th win in our weekly matchups. How's it going, dude?
Not too bad. It's another week in the books. Just enjoying life. But, Jacob, I do have to cut our broadcast interruptibly and have to play you something because you know that there's a day coming up. So I have to play you something in order to get this day started.
Martin, what are you talking about?
Hold on, you'll hear it.
This is your birthday.
Am I hearing 50
Happy birthday,
cents?
Jacob.
It's your birthday. And you know, is that your birthday? You're funny.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Martin, you're
Jacob.
catching me a day early, but by the time the listeners hear this, yes, it's my birthday on the 9th. Thanks, Martin.
You know what, brother? You're my best friend. Got to play a little 50 Cent in the club. Happy birthday. Got to get you pumped up for tomorrow, man. Happy 24th birthday. Love you, brother. And I can't believe you're my best friend.
Appreciate it, Martin. And I guess my birthday gift is going to be a nice win once again this week from Martin. He's gonna give it right to me. Isn't that right?
Hey, man,
Speaking of Week 9 in the NFL, Martin and I went 10-4. You went 500 once again, like the Indianapolis 500. That's how much you've just been around in circles this year, but you're staying above 500, 72-64. Meanwhile, I'm getting closer and closer to a 2-1 ratio, 86-50 overall. But Martin, give me a recap on Week 9.
Week 9 was a fun one. I got to give you credit that IndyCar reference right there. You know, I'm a big racing fan. I love that reference right there. That was really cool. Week 9 was a fun week. There was a good amount of games in the week that were fun. Some injuries happened prior to the game started, so we missed a couple duds that probably would have been wins. Some good fights, some good contests. Dude, I don't know about you, but the best game for me was that Texans and who did the Texans play? I apologize. The Texans and the Bucks. That was the best game of the day. That was so much fun to see C.J. Stroud just throw for that many yards. He broke I think it was Andrew Luck record for the most yards thrown by a rookie. 5 touchdowns, almost 500 yards, an amazing effort. The rest of the week was fun. There was some good amount of games. The Eagles-Cowboys game was fun, came down to the wire. The Raiders beating the Giants. There was a good amount of games this week that were fun, but that Texans-Bucks game was the top of the list.
I would have to agree. I think, this was one of the best weeks of watching NFL Red Zone that I can remember throughout the season. Yeah, multiple games coming down right to the wire, whether you go for the quad box, whether you're just flipping the channel. If you're on Red Zone, you had a lot of fun, entertaining games coming down to the wire, especially those 1 o'clock games that you mentioned, Martin. How about the Bengals and the Bills on Sunday night? The Bengals picking up a much-needed win. Maybe our best prediction here from the Coin Flip podcast. Me and Martin both riding with the Bengals outright, and that certainly hit. But speaking of games that didn't hit, Martin, the Raiders, we didn't get that game. We both rolled with the Giants for some reason. I definitely regretted that pick after we wrapped up the podcast. The Rams did not have Matthew Stafford. You kind of alluded to that earlier in the pod. The Vikings, we both missed out on the Vikings because we both picked Atlanta to cover that. But Josh Dobbs, I'm hearing so many different nicknames for Josh Dobbs. I've heard this guy get called the Dobb Father, the Pastronaut. Martin, what do you think of Josh Dobbs' performance coming in on the definition of short notice?
You know what? So I have underdog fantasy, and it's the only one here in the state of Utah they allow. I wish they would allow DraftKings because I would probably make some money off of that too, with picking who would get a touchdown and whatnot. But my point is, I saw Josh Dobbs goes in the game. I'm like, he hasn't practiced with the team. He hasn't done anything with them. And I saw that they had him at 250 total yards. I'm like, there's no way he's going to go for 250 total yards. I sat there for a couple minutes thinking, I don't know, maybe it's the right move, maybe it's not. He ended up with, I think, like 260 total yards because he ran for like 60 yards and threw for almost 200. I mean, I don't know where it came from. That was his first career comeback win in his entire career. I mean, he's bounced around. He's been with Pittsburgh. He's been with Cleveland, Arizona, Minnesota. I forget which another stop was in between that because they said he was with 5 teams already in 5 seasons. Just amazing to come off the bench, get a win. But we also had to remember it's the Falcons. The Falcons are a choking team. They still haven't recovered from 28-3. Vikings go in 1-4 to start the season and end up 5-4 and are sneaking into a small chance at a playoff spot. Josh Dobbs got the job done for Minnesota.
Martin, and it's no secret. Me and you both have deep ties to the state of Utah. Jaren Hall, former BYU quarterback, that might be the only start he gets in his entire career, and it ended on the goal line in his first drive. But Martin, if there's nothing else we want to recap from Week 9, let's move on to Week 10. You ready?
Let's do it.
We're starting off with a banger. It was only a matter of time before Martin's Bears, my Carolina Panthers, are going head-to-head. And what a better way to go head-to-head than on Thursday night. Me and Martin are going to have a full dose of football by the time Sunday even rolls around, because the Panthers and the Bears are rolling out there in the Toilet Bowl, another, just an absolute stinker in a primetime game. It's a shame they can't flex the schedules a little bit more, but Martin, for us, this is great news. If you were in Chicago, if I was in Chicago, one of us might try to pull up to that game, but nevertheless, I'm going to let you start out with a prediction here, putting 2:45 on our timer on the clock. Martin, let's kick it off with the Week 10 predictions. Where are you going?
Let's start with the Bears and the Panthers. Obviously, that's the first game of the week. And if I could ever, Jacob, come up with at least $500 for you and me to go to a Chicago Bears game, yeah, I said $500 because each ticket is about $200, and to get down there and travel back would be about $100. So we would be spending some pretty money for one horrible, horrible football game. Reports are Justin Fields is doubtful. Tyson Bagent might start. So if I had to pick between Bagent and Young, no, I'm not gonna do it this week either. I'm kidding. I'm picking the Bears. Obviously, I'm taking the Bears in this one. I just think their defense will be a little more of a struggle for Bryce Young to figure out. We're getting our entire secondary back up and healthy. We got Montez Sweat, who will try to pass rush the crap out of Bryce Young. I think the running defense for the Bears is strong. I just think their secondary and their passing defense isn't great. They have no pass rushers. They need someone to be scary. But I still think the Bears pull out a marginal win. I'm somewhere between like 17-13 or 20-17, a low scoring game for another Thursday night game, but I'm taking the Bears.
Well, as much as I wish I could say about my team that our defense is healthy, that's really not quite the case still. This is a great game for DJ Moore. I am very intrigued to see how DJ Moore plays in this game. I wish this game was in Carolina for that reason, but I'm curious if we're going to see a la Steve Smith on the Baltimore Ravens facing the Panthers for the first time. Similar performance. I wonder if DJ Moore is going to go out there and score a touchdown and take his helmet off and have plenty to say about it. I'm wishing Moore the best, but Martin, I think the Panthers are trending towards a victory. the Panthers just seem to get a little bit less and less humiliating each week when it comes to their competitiveness in some of these games early on in the first half. I think that's probably the only positive a Panthers fan can say about this season. Martin, it's hard to see Bryce Young going down. I think he can only go up from here after a 3-interception performance last week. But I will say some of those picks were just trying to create something out of nothing. And I think in this type of ball game, we saw the Panthers win a 15-12, 15-13 ball game against the Texans. The Panthers have proved that their defense can show up here and there this season. I think they'll show up against Agent like they showed up against Stroud 2 weeks ago. I got the Panthers. No surprise here with the homer picks on the first matchup in the Coin Flip podcast. That's Bears-Panthers. On to Colts at the Patriots in the Frankfurt games in Germany. Martin, back-to-back Germany games. And before we got to mention that the Panthers-Bears game is on my birthday. I mean, what the great matchup. Hope to see a birthday victory there. But Martin, Colts-Pats.
Colts-Pats, this game is going to... They kept fighting throughout that game. They made it closer than what it should have. Obviously, we saw the week before that and what the Patriots did in a comeback win against the Buffalo Bills to close that game out. So they're a teeter-totter type team. They have their moments. Rashad Stevenson had a great game. They were able to get the passing game open up a little bit more, but Mac Jones was still Mac Jones. If you ask me between Mac Jones and Gardner Minshew, I'm taking the Colts in this one. I think the Colts are figuring out that they have two different style quarterbacks. Minshew is good enough to keep them out of trouble, and I think against a still struggling defense and a struggling offense in the Patriots, I think if they don't turn the ball over at all and just keep feeding Taylor the ball and do enough on the passing game, they can win this game. Give me the Colts.
Neither of these teams have necessarily been headed in the right direction over the last 4 weeks, both just winning one game each. Martin, this is a great matchup for the overseas fans who maybe think that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are still going at it. But I think I'm going to roll with the Patriots here, Martin. This is a home game. This is Bill Belichick. This is low scoring. Mac Jones really got up for that Buffalo Bills game. And I think he can maybe, find some of that similar energy again. The Colts are coming off a win. I don't think they've had back-to-back wins all season. Give me the Patriots here. It's been a little bit since they've won. Bill Belichick is definitely not trying to tank at all. And it's hard for me to see the Colts being 500 after 10 weeks in the National Football League. I'm going to go with the Patriots here, Martin. How about the Texans and the Bengals, though? Cincinnati, a touchdown favorite at home against the hot quarterback from Texas. Houston, C.J. Stroud.
I would have picked the Houston Texans in this pick, Jacob, but I'm not going to pick them only because if we've seen some type of trend with the Texans is that they've struggled on the road. I mean, they lost to the Panthers on the road. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens on the road to start the season. I know they've had another road loss in there as well. So they've had their ups and downs when going on the road. I think that'll be the same case here. I think the Bengals are on a roll. I think the Bengals have really found their rhythm. Joe Burrow is healthy. I mean, their performance against the Bills on Sunday night was, I get it, they went kind of back and forth a little bit, and then the Bengals grabbed the game and took it over. I still think the Bengals are a much better complete team than the Texans. I'll go with Cincinnati.
Give me Cincinnati as well, Martin. They run 4 in a row. This is the hottest team in the NFL. I cannot believe that it was essentially, even money either way for the Bengals to miss the playoffs or to make the playoffs after week 3 or 4 early in the season. Since then, they have not lost. That would have been a great bet to smash. Unfortunately, we missed out on that. But, Cincinnati's been rolling hot. Joe Burrow's healthy. He's only thrown 4 picks all season long. C.J. Stroud's only thrown 1 interception this entire season. So I think it's going to be a shootout automatically. The Bengals defense is solid. The Texans defense probably has a little bit more ground to make up. You can almost look at the quarterbacks here and say, these are the best 2 quarterbacks of the last couple of weeks in the NFL. You're guaranteed a high shootout, but I trust the Bengals defense a little bit more. I think Stroud will go for his second pick of the season. Jamar Chase, he's had only 4 touchdowns. You could say only 4 touchdowns is crazy halfway through the season, but for Jamar Chase, it kind of is. I like the odds of him finding the end zone again. I think they got T. Higgins back, sort of infiltrated, in the flow of offense once again. So I'm going to roll with Joe Shiesty and the Bengals. 2 for 2 with the Bengals. Packers, Steelers, Pittsburgh -3.5. Martin.
With this game between the Packers and the Steelers, this is a tough pick here, Jacob, only because these are 2 bad marginal offenses. We saw what the Steelers did against the Titans, but that was a closer game than probably what it should have been. The Titans offensively did a little bit more than the Steelers. The Steelers did enough to win that game. The Packers had a good day on offense versus the Rams, but the Rams didn't have a quarterback. If I still had to pick in this game, the Steelers are missing Minka Fitzpatrick. They don't have anybody back there. But I'll still roll with the Steelers in a close win. This is like a 2-3 point win for me. Give me Pittsburgh.
So Martin is rocking with Steel City. Martin, the Packers have been playing well. The Packers have been playing well recently. Now, I don't think they can, close out the season making the playoffs or anything. But it's interesting that the Steelers are where they are. Their offense has not looked good. The Matt Canada, fire chants have continued throughout the year. Those haven't really improved, although the Steelers do have a 5-3 record. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers are not rolling through that door on Sunday, so I gotta agree with you. We're both gonna take the Steelers here. This will probably be one of the lowest scoring games of the week. I think the over-under 39.5 suggests that as well. This is a great opportunity for Najee Harris to get going. Deontay Johnson kind of came alive last week for Pittsburgh. Make that 2 in a row this week with him. And Kenny Pickett, my man, you got to score some more touchdowns. Everybody's been clowning you, having the same amount of passing touchdowns in your career as C.J. Stroud, buddy. This is the week to get it together. I think the Steelers continue a solid season and put themselves significantly in the mix to not only, make a wild card in the AFC, they're still up to win that division in the crazy, crazy North. Martin, how about the Titans and the Bucs?
Okay, the Titans and the Bucs. I'll make this very easy. I'm going to rock with the Titans. The reason why I'm rocking with the Titans is Will Levis, Mayo Boy, Coffee Mayo Boy, has not done terrible, Jacob. I mean, I know it's only 2 starts. Let me say that. It's been 2 starts. He went up against one bad defense in the Falcons and a banged up defense in the Steelers, and was impressive in both games. He had moments where he was trying to throw the ball too many times to DeAndre Hopkins in the game versus the Steelers, and they really didn't get the running game going as much as they wanted to with Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears in the backfield. I think this week they have more success with that. Tampa Bay's got a great run defense, but if Will Levis does not turn the ball over, I don't see Baker Mayfield being enough to beat this Tennessee Titans. I'm rocking with the Titans in this game as one of my underdogs.
Give me the Titans as well. I think they'll be favored by the time Sunday rolls around. I think the Baker Mayfield Buccaneers stint, was fun to start the year, but by the time the season's done, everybody in the front office there in Tampa Bay should recognize that was just another year in mediocrity. Another year in no man's land. Another year where you might not get another top 5 pick, but you certainly didn't make the playoffs. It's the Buccaneers, Martin. I'm not going to pick them, especially after giving up 39 points last week. They hung 37. The offense has some capability, but the Titans like to slow it down. I feel like in games I've picked the Titans this year, they continue to lose when I pick them, but I'm not going to pick them anyway. Just cause. Something about Martin here, if you're a new viewer to the Coin Flip podcast, I can go back years in my memory bank and recall Martin, being very hesitant on any sort of rookie or young player across the NBA, across the NFL. For Martin to say that Will Levis hasn't been bad is a huge compliment coming from Martin. That means that he's been very, very solid. 4 touchdowns is insane. You kind of come back to earth. Still getting the yardage, but not the touchdowns. The interception there from Will Levis. I got the Titans though, regardless. Moving on now to the Browns and Baltimore. Baltimore is the hottest team in the NFL. Either them or the Bengals, Martin. But do the Ravens continue the win streak?
On this one, and the reason why I would take Baltimore is because Deshaun Watson doesn't look like the Houston Texan Deshaun Watson anymore. I don't even think he's close to Clemson Deshaun Watson. I think that was overall the best Deshaun Watson of all time. I don't know what is with him, man. I don't know if it's in his head. I don't know if he's not confident in the Kyle Stefanski offense. I don't know if it's his offensive line. I don't know if it's his ability to get the ball to his receivers. But Deshaun Watson has just looked lost and scared sometimes in that backfield, trying to get passes completed. I know they beat Arizona. They shut him out. But that's Arizona. They're tanking for Caleb Williams. They're not trying to get wins. If you're telling me that the Browns, with a Deshaun Watson who's struggling, can go on the road and beat a legitimate playoff team, I'm taking the opposing team. I think Baltimore will get a win here solidly because the Browns offense is a bit of a mess and I don't know where they're going.
I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens as well, Martin. I think I've picked against the Ravens a couple of times, and they've pretty much been unsuccessful every time I picked against them, Martin. So I'm going to roll with them as well. I think Lamar Jackson's putting together a solid MVP campaign. I think they've started to figure things out on the outside. OBJ just had his last touchdown, or his first touchdown last week. Great to see, a potential future Hall of Famer get into the end zone. They've figured out things with Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, kind of from the get-go, was a nice target for Lamar. They're figuring out how to use him in better situations, get him in the end zone, get him closer to the end zone. Mark Andrews, you would think this is maybe a down year for Mark Andrews. You haven't heard much about this guy, but he still put up 6 touchdowns and close to 500 yards. Martin, you mentioned it, Deshaun Watson. Last week he didn't do too bad. He kind of, other than the fumbles, does a good job of not throwing interceptions. Only 3 total on the season, but the yards haven't been there at all. You may be onto something with, Clemson, Deshaun Watson. Maybe if he gets those massages back, Martin, then he'll be in the right headspace. But I'm going to roll with Baltimore as well, especially at home. How about the Jags and the Niners?
Well, as I'm looking this up, I'm wondering about I'm wondering if they're gonna have their entire offense or if because they're still missing not Debo Samuel, they're not missing Christian McCaffrey, they're missing Ayuk. Not sure about his status going into this game. The Niners did have the week off. The Jags have been pretty solid at home. The last time I picked against the Jags, they won. So, it's that like teeter-totter. Do I trust Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne to beat Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey? You know what? This will be another underdog pick. We'll see what happens with the Tampa Bay and Tennessee line, but I'll take Jacksonville. I'll take a risk here. I think the Jags can beat them. Defensively, the Niners are better, but the Jags offense has had moments this year where it's lit up the board. Let's see if they can light it up against this Niners defense.
You're taking the Jags here. Martin, I think I might take the Niners. The only way in my head the Niners can be a 3-point favorite on the road against a team like Jacksonville, according to the odds makers, is that they truly believe that San Francisco is going to look healthy out there. Martin, we've seen the San Francisco 49ers have quite the wide media coverage range this season. We've seen the Niners, all offseason and coming into the year, talked about with the quarterback drama, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, and then everybody, 5-6 games in, it looked like the Niners were Super Bowl favorites, and now they've, came back to earth, and then some. They're kind of 6 feet under right now, Martin. They're a little bit more desperate to win this. Jacksonville is sitting comfortable. I don't think there's any shot, the Texans or the Colts and Titans can take this division away from Jacksonville. They'll still get their 10 wins. But, Martin, I think the Niners are going to sense a little bit more desperation here. Maybe their most, desperate game since the last playoff game they were in last season. And I think they're going to show why they can still be the team to come out of the NFC if things go their way. Give me the Niners here. Give me Brock Purdy playing solid, doing enough. Give me Deebo Samuel showing out, and give me George Kittle having another monster game. Give me the 49ers on the road in a bounce-back week for San Fran. Saints and the Vikings. Martin, this is Josh Dobbs hosting Derek Carr.
Yeah, it's the battle of above average versus average. Obviously, that Josh Dobbs got the win last week. I think he'll come back down to earth. I think the Saints will do enough in this game to win. As much as I would like to rock with the Vikings and pick another underdog here, I just don't. Their defense is too shady to me. They have no pass rush. They really don't have a whole lot of secondary. I just can't trust their defense to keep them in this game. I think it will be kind of one of a back and forth, maybe like a 27-24 type game. But I'm rocking with New Orleans on the road.
I think the Vikings have found their spark. It might be simple NFL math that I'm going to do right now, Martin. But if we take Josh Dobbs with no practice and he gets a win, and then we're going to add a week of practice, I'm going to go out there and say he gets another win, especially against a team like the Saints, who just seem to shoot themselves in the leg, a couple times throughout the season in very, very winnable games. They need to feed Kamara. They need to feed Olave. They need to see what's going on with Michael Thomas. But none of that is going to come to fruition because Josh Dobbs has earned the trust of many NFL fans. I think they are going to cover for sure, if not win outright. And Martin, I think the going back to a sense of urgency here, it exists. Now I know that everybody says and everybody believes they give it their 100% every single week, and that could be true. But perhaps in the back of their minds it gives them a little bit of an extra boost. And I think the Vikings pull through. The Saints recognize that they're in just a patty cake of a division that they could win with 8 wins. The Vikings, probably need to, put up a fight in the division to at least make the playoffs. Give me Minnesota, especially with Justin Jefferson back on the practice field and Dobbs doing what he's been doing. I think that'll, really ignite the team from an emotional standpoint. Martin, you're taking the Saints. I'm taking the Vikings. How about the Falcons and the Cardinals?
Well, Jacob, even though it's just going to be his first career start back since his injury, and I'm talking about Kyler Murray, tore his ACL last year. It's good to see him back on the field. Was very happy for him with all his Call of Duty work in the offseason because it's so important to make sure that he looks down the barrel as he's facing his enemies on the screen, not on the field, because he can barely do that to see over his offensive line. Point is, if you had to ask me, I am going to take the Cardinals. I'm going to take them in the upset. The only reason why I'll take them in the upset is because the Falcons continue to be the Falcons. I mentioned it in our review over the week. They still have chicken bones in their throat. They have not gotten over 28-3. I don't trust the Falcons. The last time they were on the road, they got blown out by the Titans. They're going on the road again. As much as Arizona is a terrible roster, Kyler Murray and anything that's left in Arizona is much better than the Atlanta Falcons. Give me the Cardinals in an upset win.
I think we're going to both take the Cardinals, and some of it will be because we got burned on the Falcons last week, Martin, against the Vikings. So we're both going to roll with the Cards here. There's just a lot of stuff going on with Arthur Smith and how he's handling that ball club. Taylor Heineke's the starter. That gives me hope. But I think the Arizona Cardinals have been, really, some of the veterans in that locker room have not been happy with their losing season. Call of Duty Murray does come back, and he's going to find a way to quick scope the Falcons on a way to a victory this Sunday. Bijan Robinson's there. They're just not using him. Algiers solid. Algiers probably one of the fantasy steals of the year. Bijan bettors, Bijan fantasy owners have to be really upset. And until they figure out how to use him and Kyle Pitts, I'm not picking the Falcons either, Martin. Cardinals 2 for 2. How about the Lions and Chargers?
Lions and Chargers. This game is going to be good in my eyes, Jacob, because the Lions are a good road team. They have won legitimately 3 out of their 4 road games this year. They have won. They won against the Bucks. They won against the Chiefs, and they won against the Packers earlier in the season. They have a pretty soft schedule coming up. They have the Broncos, the Bears, the Saints, the Packers, the Bears twice. The Chargers offensively are fun. Defensively, they're scary. But I'll pick another underdog here. I will take the risk. I'm going to rock with the Chargers. Detroit's offense is fun, but I don't know if Detroit's defense can keep up with this fast-paced offense of the Chargers. I know it's the Chargers and their analytic ideas and how they still find a way to shoot themselves in the foot with all of that. But I don't know. I don't trust that Lions defense completely. They are still missing Gardner Johnson, who was their big signing in the offseason. I'm rocking with the Chargers.
Martin's taking the Chargers. I might have leaned towards the Chargers, but you're taking them. I think I'm going to take... You know what? I'll take the Chargers as well, Martin. I'll just take the Chargers as well. Kind of looking at how these teams have done lately, that huge loss to Baltimore, it looks a lot better now this week, given that the Seahawks just got blowed out by the Ravens as well. But you kind of hang around with too much of the game if you're the Lions with teams like Las Vegas, with teams like Tampa Bay, Carolina, Green Bay. They've kind of had a pancake schedule, a pretty flat schedule early on, and it's about to creep up here with the Chargers, who have been facing some tougher teams as of late with Kansas City and Dallas. And, once you throw out some teams that are struggling on offense, they've had no trouble with them, winning by double digits easily over the last 2 weeks. Give me the Chargers to kind of find some mid-season steam here. I think they need to, figure out things with Quentin Johnson. Brandon Staley needs to get that defense calling card back to where it should be with the talent he has. Give me the Chargers to keep things interesting in the AFC. Over to the Giants and the Cowboys here. This one's a no-brainer.
Absolutely a no-brainer. I'll cut you off there, Jacob. I'm not going against the Cowgirls here. I'm not even going to try to come up with some explanation. I feel bad for Saquon Barkley, such a talented player to come out of college, a guy that has so much potential, so much ahead of him that he looked like he had some Hall of Fame career already lined up. All he had to do was just step on the field and the gold jacket would be his. The Giants have completely destroyed him. They destroyed Daniel Jones. They've destroyed anything in that organization that had any chance. I don't even know what they're doing with Keelan Thibodeau. Why are you dropping him in coverage? Why is he not just pass rushing the quarterback like Micah Parsons? He can have that ability like Micah. Like, just throw him in blitz coverages and just say, go get the quarterback. I don't get it with the Giants. The Cowboys are going to win this by their eyes closed. Dak Prescott doesn't deserve this win. He has looked pretty even this season. Give the Cowboys a free win, a week off. They need to get ready for next week, not this week.
If we're going to truly see Tommy DeVito out there at quarterback, once again for the New York Giants, then they are definitely not going to win this game. But, Martin, we have to remember the history with dem boys. Martin, dem boys were roughly a 16-point favorite, pretty close to it, back at the beginning of the season when everybody was starting to, chant Dallas Cowboys, Super Bowl potential, and they absolutely crumbled as one of the biggest favorites of the year to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I just can't do it here, especially when we're picking money lines, picking just outright picks here. For the sake of my season total, I got to do the safe one with the Cowboys. But I think the Giants covering that spread against a very unserious, unmotivated Dallas Cowboys for this Sunday, I'll totally take the 16-point spread for New York. But yeah, the Cowboys will find a way to win this one, and probably a very underwhelming performance. How about the Commanders and the Seahawks? Does Geno bounce back?
Geno does bounce back in this one. The Seahawks have been very solid at home this year. That has been an area where they've been really good. Obviously, they had their game against the Rams earlier in the season. And that was a loss. But the Seahawks have done pretty well at home, and they haven't done bad in their last two games. Jacob. I mean, yeah, they lost to the Ravens, but they beat the Browns. They had a close game against the Seahawks. So against above 500 teams, they have had their teeter-totter moments, but I don't think this one gets any close. The Commanders, what they did against the Patriots was good, but that was against the Patriots, and they've struggled all season. The Seahawks defense is good. They will keep the Commanders in check. I don't think Eric Bieniemy is going to have anything up his sleeve that's going to get the Seahawks off their game. Give me Seattle.
So Martin is rolling with the Seattle Seahawks. The Washington Commanders will come to town 6.5-point dogs. This is a game that I think will be pretty close. Two teams that are both sort of hovering relatively around 500. The Seahawks took a big loss last week, and so I think they will bounce back. We'll both go with the Seattle Seahawks here. But if the Commanders want to make any noise in the NFC, have a chance to contend for a 7th-week wildcard spot, then this is one of those games where they need to hang in there. They need to try to pull this one out. I don't think they're going to have enough. I think Sam Howell, there's enough film out on him. Although, Geno Smith may not quite be having the season he had last year, and as far as, touchdown interception ratio, I think he's gonna thrive in this kind of situation. I think, Washington's locker room perhaps has recognized that once you trade a guy like Chase Young, the higher-ups have given up on the season. That's never good for a locker room if, they recognize one of their best players gets traded mid-season. And so I think that'll sort of take a toll on the Commanders mentally, and I'm going to roll with Seattle. Martin, we've agreed on a lot of these picks here as of late, so, perhaps both of us will have a solid week. But how about the Jets and the Raiders? Martin, I want to point out before you go here, New York and Las Vegas, that, I pencil in all these spreads on the spreadsheet here before we get started. And sometimes, on the occasion, a spread will move mid-podcast. And I've never seen this. This is on the ESPN app I'm seeing this. But Martin, The Jets are favorited now by a half of a point, not by 1 point. It's not an even bet. They are literally favored by 0.5. I've never seen that on the ESPN app. So this is a definition of a toss-up. Jets and Raiders. How does this one go down?
Well, Jacob, like you said, we've been picking some picks that are familiar, so I'll spoil it a little bit. These two picks are going to be underdog picks by me. And yes, I said underdog picks. I'm taking the Raiders in this one. The Raiders are not a complete team, and Aiden O'Connell is not an NFL starting quarterback. I like the kid. He's a tough kid. Came from Purdue, so he knows how to play tough football, okay? It's not like he played at Iowa where they hand the ball off. He played at Purdue. That's still a tough school to play at. That's still a tough schedule to play. You got to play Ohio State. You got to play Michigan, Michigan State. Those are 3 tough teams. Wisconsin. Those are 4 tough teams you had to play on the college schedule, so he knows how to play tough football. The Raiders beat a banged-up Giants team, but they're going to be playing against an incompetent Jets team that has completely since they drafted it season. But that's because his defense stepped up and played like lights out. I don't think they'll do it again this week. Give me the Raiders in a small little bit of an underdog pick.
Martin, I'm going to go with the Raiders as well. I think they'll be favored by the time this one rolls around, so you might not get the underdog pick for the week. I'm going to go with the Raiders as well, Martin. And an angle I'm going to take on this one is, debatably controversial depending on what your take is. But Martin, when we're thinking of, the demographics of an NFL locker room and who these individuals are, right? And we think about some of the time who these coaches are, it is a lot easier in my head. Martin, you grew up, outside of Chicago. I grew up, in Raleigh. Martin, it's a lot easier for me and maybe even you to see that, who these individuals are in the Las Vegas locker room are going to be more likely to come around a guy like Coach Pierce as opposed to McDaniels. So that, that alone, I think, has inspired the Raiders. I think this, they have more of a, they maybe even have more of like a throwback college, high school football kind of clubhouse feel, I think, at this point in the season, Martin. So I think the Raiders are a really interesting story. And, the Raiders, the last couple of seasons have been kind of that team who, looks like they're in the campaign of the number 1 overall pick, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in playoff conversations. The Raiders win this week against the Jets in what will probably be one of the most discussed games on Monday. Martin, the Broncos and the Bills, Buffalo -7.5.
I'm picking the Broncos, and simply why I'm picking Denver in this one. You can write it on the screen. I know you're waiting for me to finish, but you can write it right there. I'm picking the Broncos. Jacob, I want to take you back a couple weeks. We had Nay on the show, and that week we had San Francisco going to Minnesota on a Monday night, and both you and Nay were starstruck, gasp, that I picked the Vikings over the Niners in that underdog pick, and I got that pick right. Now, yes, it was a fluke of a win. Yes, I understood it was really luck, but there's some similarities, Jacob. The similarities are that Minnesota was a team on the down, but everyone overlooked them because they're playing a team that's on the rise in the Bills, but the Bills are not on the rise. They've lost 2 games in a row, and the last time the Bills played against a team that's that weak, that was not that strong, they almost lost to the Giants on Sunday night with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, and they would have lost that game if Darren Waller would have got the pass interference call that he wanted on the goal line. So with that, I'm taking the Broncos because the Bills are on the run. They're scared. They're not the strong-holded Bills that we've known in the past. Losing to the Patriots on a fluke play, almost losing to the Giants on a fluke play, and losing to the Bengals. Yeah, I don't trust this Bills team one bit. Give me the Broncos in an upset.
Martin, we might not trust them, but I'm going to pick the Bills. But going right here on the screen, Week 7, everybody sees it. When Nay was the guest appearance. Martin, you're right. We did both, scoff at the notion that you were going to take the Vikings over San Francisco, who was the hottest team in the NFL at the time. Martin Nay kind of bit the words with going 3-10, the worst any of us have gone throughout the entire season. But that's besides the point. Martin, you hit the Vikings to not only hit that pick, but to win the week outright. Down the stretch, I would have stole it from you if the Niners just would have hung on as monster favorites. But nevertheless, Martin has a trend, a slight trend. A broken clock can be right twice a day, and it might be right again. It might be right again on Monday night. But Martin, I'm going to take the Bills. I think Josh Allen will at least be able to look across the line of scrimmage, or not across the line of scrimmage, across the football field at Russell Wilson and say, I'm better than that guy. I'm going to outperform that guy. Josh Allen is going to go Superman mode here, and he will not meet his kryptonite. So, Martin, that's Week 10 in the NFL. Great predictions listed on screen. Neither one of us have had a perfect week. I know the odds of that are very, very hard to do, Martin, but, perhaps this could be the week where one of us goes undefeated.
I said it there. You come close. What? You've had 10 win. I think you've had 10-win weeks. So, I mean, you've come close to being nearly perfect. I think there was yeah, couple. There you go. 12 wins. I mean,
I've had
you've
two
had the
12s,
double-digit
couple
wins.
10s, and 11.
Yeah, I've my closest I've come to is 9 wins. I have not cracked a double digit this year at all. Oh no, wait, I take that back. I got one. Point is, it's a good week. This is a week where a lot of people, Jacob, to my eyes and the way it all looks, would pick more of the favorites because there's just a list of games where you would just be like, oh yeah, this team's gonna win, this team's gonna win, that team's gonna win, this team's gonna win, that team's gonna win, this team's gonna win, based on the fact of the spreads. Because you're just like, well, the inferior team won't beat the superior team. This week we don't have a whole lot of superior teams versus superior teams, so that's why there's a whole lot of bigger margins on the week, and there's some close ones too. My point is, this week is gonna be a good week if you're an underdog pick. Maybe there's some good underdog picks in this one. I feel like there are. We'll see what happens. It's gonna be a fun week. That's just all I gotta say.
I think the underdog picks, from weeks like 1 through 6, the first third of the season, picking monster favorites is dangerous. Picking heavy underdogs, you never know what could happen just because you're so early into the season and teams are still kind of showing you who they fully are. But I think by this point in the season, the later in the season you go, the more unlikely it is that you see, a double-digit underdog. But Martin, you're taking a touchdown underdog, which is still significant. If the Broncos find a way to win this one, this will be one of your best picks of the year. But man, you heard it first. Jacob Zimmerman and Martin Kelly here on the Coin Flip Podcast. That's Week 10 predictions. But Martin, we have some monster brands in the NFL who are all on bye weeks this week. I'm surprised the NFL, who's all about the dollar, elected to do this. But the Chiefs, Eagles, Dolphins, and Rams are all, waving the flag for the week. Ryan, I'll make some comments here on these teams before I hand it over to you, and we'll close this out. The Chiefs, everybody in the media is just finding a way to have a conversation about the Chiefs. The whole wide receiver, issue, the whole Mahomes, quote-unquote, struggles, it's all a myth. It's just to create buzz about the Chiefs so they maintain atop the NFL relevancy list until they inevitably are back in the AFC Championship game. Martin, the Eagles are probably on a one-way path. They have a ticket booked to the NFC Championship game. I'm not too worried about them either. The tush push, their quarterback, sneak play has been the largest topic about them throughout the year, so that just proves that they're fine as well. The Dolphins have yet to beat a team above 500. That's kind of concerning, and I think they might be looking at a first-round playoff exit. And then the Rams are in some dangerous waters here. It's looking like the Rams probably will miss the playoffs if Matthew Stafford's gone. Even though I have my, gripes here and there about Matthew Stafford, he's still a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and without him, they are burnt toast. Martin, any comments on the bye week's teams?
To start with, the Rams, you hit it right on the head. There's nothing to talk about them in the sense that this week they better go find a solid backup quarterback. They better trade for a solid. They can't trade anymore, but they better go find one. As much as I like Rippon, I think he's the nephew of Mark Rippon, the guy that led the Washington Commanders at the time called the Redskins with a Super Bowl win over the Bills in the early 90s. The kid's fun, the kid's exciting, but he's not an NFL quarterback. He tried. I give him that credit. He tried. To the Dolphins, you mentioned it. They haven't beaten the 500 team this year. They're still looking for that 500 win above a team like that. They need a week off. We'll see what happens. Right now, they're in the driver's seat for the division title, so we'll see what happens when Wild Card Weekend comes around in January and who they will face in the next round after that. The Eagles, they need a week off. I know they're the Eagles, the tush push, and their dominance, but I still feel like their armor has been shattered some way. I don't think they're that inevitable team that we saw last year, even with some of the upgrades or the mentality of the upgrades. With AJ Brown going off like Terrell Owens in that uniform for the Eagles. The Chiefs, it's nice to have 1 week off from Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. We don't need that shoved in our faces every week, though I don't hate it, but it's slightly annoying just in the sense of the NFL. We'll see what happens with those three teams kicking it up next week. But you're right, Jacob. I'm surprised that the NFL gave these three top teams the week off. But at some point, you got to tell your top flight teams to take a week off and give the underdog teams a chance. So, like I said, this is an underdog pick week. If these underdog picks go right, man, there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of money on Tuesday morning.
I don't watch this podcast, but this would sure be a great week for a Kelsey Brothers podcast, which I know is getting more famous by the day. But Martin, I have no issue with the Taylor Swift plugs because that means one thing and one thing only. Travis Kelce is going off for my fantasy team, which he will not be able to do for me this week, almost guaranteeing me a couple of losses. But Martin, that's the Coin Flip Podcast, Week 10 NFL predictions, as well as a little bit of reaction back from Week 9. That's Martino. I'm Jacobo, saying so long. See you next week. Come back next week to see how we do. Like, comment, subscribe. See ya.
Peace.